Well, this is a little 8-gallon tank, just a touch above 8 gallons, that I made. If you notice, it actually has a trim. What I did was I took I salvaged two 10-gallon tanks someone in the complex I live in threw away. And one was a Marineland, and the other one was a Aqueon. I like the way Aqueon builds them a little better because the glass sits on top of the bottom pane. Marineland, they put the front pane in or back pane in and a side pane in first, and then slide it up so that the bottom pane butts up against the edge on all four sides. Whatever. But what I did was I took the side pieces and the bottom and cut 2 inches off of it. Right off the back on the two sides and off the bottom. And to make the frame fit, I cut the frame right here, this way, against the glass before I took it apart. And then an angle in. And then off of another piece, or was it the same piece? I can't remember. I took this piece and cut it, and then I used this to glue it together. And I know this is made for acrylic, but I've used it on a lot of different types of plastic, and it seems to work really, really well. It worked on every kind of plastic I've tried to glue together. It seemed to work pretty well on. And I also cut, as you can see, some Euro braces on the front and back. I did this because when I did a dry fit, I noticed the front and back panes were bowing out a lot, and I didn't like that. I used ASI aquarium sealant. Got it from bestmaterials.com. I had a bunch of this stuff because I've been planning on doing a bigger build, but I figured, you know what? I'm going to try a smaller one first. See how it turns out. Looks pretty good. Word to the wise, though, when working with that sealant, also here outdoors in Florida, it started to skin within just over a minute. So I didn't have a lot of time to work with it. So this is actually the second time I've put this together. The first time I put it together, I had all the edges taped off, all the seams and everything taped off. So I put the whole thing together and went back to run my finger on all the seams, and it was just chunk. And I was like, oh, damn. So I took it all apart. While it was still kind of wet, I took most of the silicone out. I went and cleaned most of the silicone back off after it dried. Actually I'm getting pretty good at cleaning that silicone off. Just a little elbow grease and razor blades. But this is the second time I put it together, and instead of taping it off, since it's a small tank, working around inside of it, peeling all that tape off, it would have just been really difficult. So I just went ahead and did the seams without taping it. And I think it worked out pretty well. You can barely see them. Worked really well. This stuff does really dry really clear. Now this edge, it was kind of chunky on the seam there, so I took a razor blade, scored it, and then just rubbed it with my finger back and forth, and that seemed to get that edge off, the chunky edge. There's a couple other little spots that are a little clumpy, but working with these Euro braces, putting these on, and when they're so light and it's so small, it was a little difficult. But I just filled this up with water. It was setting for 24 hours. The tube says fully cures within 24 hours. But it doesn't reach maximum strength for 7 days. But then there's this other chart on it that's like something about immersed in water and strength. But I figured 24 hours should probably, on this, with only just over 8 gallons, should probably be enough. So I put the paper towels underneath it on a pretty much perfectly flat surface to do a leak test. I'm pretty sure this isn't going to leak. Everything's sealed up pretty well. All the seams, all that clear you see on that's on the back between the plastic and the glass. That's not on the inside. Let's see, that's on the outside. Still got a little touch up here to do with some razor blades, get some of the excess off. But I just wanted to get a leak test done before I did any more. So I'm going to let this sit for a few days filled. And from what I've read online on some sources, acetic silicone sealant, having the water there helps pull the acetone or whatever they use in it out. But I'm pretty sure it's fully cured already. But anyway, if you've seen my other video, I have those lights, the LED lights with the little control module I'm going to put on here. I got some mounted, 3 pieces of small mounted driftwood and a little ceramic skull I'm going to put in here. Some cryptocorin, lutea, and java fern, and Christmas moss. See how it all works out in there. And for now, I'm going to put some PFS, some white, and just a yo-yo loach. I need a small home for my yo-yo loach. He wasn't getting along with my cuttery. But this is my first. I've resealed many tanks, but I've never actually taken them apart and put them back together. And I also wanted to give a shot at trying to cut some glass and do a rimless. So this is my first rimless build. My first build and rimless with some Euro bracing. If I had used some thicker glass, I probably wouldn't need the Euro bracing, but that bowing, I wasn't too comfortable with that. Anyway, yeah, you can see a little bit of this stuff just peels off, the excess. Anyway, I'm going to let this sit for a couple days. I have read other posts where people put the silicone in, fill it up, and then drain it real quick, and they do that so that the water pressure pushes the silicone in. Now, I could see that working if you're just resealing a tank from the inside, but everything I've read from people who really know what they're doing, the majority of the sealing surface and bonding surface is actually in between the 2 panes of glass, right in there where you see that seam right there. This inside seam, it doesn't do a lot. So if you have a leaky tank and it's just a tiny, tiny leak, yeah, or if you're just wanting to clear up the silicone and it looks nasty, yeah, go ahead and carefully remove the inside silicone, the inside stuff. Don't jam. I read one post where they were saying jam that razor blade down in between the panes of glass. I can't see that doing any good. It's just going to chip up the glass really bad, and you're never going to get it right. That doesn't make any sense to me. But yeah, you can go ahead and just reseal the inside. Just make sure you get all that silicone off, scrape off all the residue with the razor blade, gently get it all off, clean it with some acetone, or I use denatured alcohol, because it's just easy to work with, and I like using that. But that gets all the oils off the surface. Something else I've seen on some other posts and videos where there's the debate whether or not to use just your plain finger or to use gloves. My thinking is that using just your finger, you have oils on your finger. No matter how many times you wash your hands, there's little tiny pores. The oil is going to come back out, like, really quick. So when you put your finger on there, you're putting the oil from your finger in your skin back onto the silicone. So that might get underneath as you're running your finger up. Some of that oil might lip over and underneath. So I use the gloves. You have to hold that glove really tight, like jam it up, slide it up and jam it so it's like really tight on your finger, and just run it really good. Because that doesn't like to slide on glass. That's why they like using your fingers. But the reason it doesn't slide, that your finger slides on glass, is because of the oil. Okay? At least this is my theory. That oil is going to get underneath the silicone and compromise your seam. Like I said, that's my theory, but I use the gloves because I don't want that oil getting underneath the seams, especially if you're doing a bigger tank. This is only 8 gallons. So 8 gallons of water, yeah, be a little bit of a mess, but not as much as 29 or 150. That'd just be a nightmare. Even if it's just a slow leak and you catch it real quick, now you've got to drain the tank, find a place for your fish and your plants and all that stuff. That's just a total nightmare. And I didn't want to take a chance of having that oil off from my skin on the glass. Cutting the glass was fun. These pieces took a few shots. It seems to me the narrower you go, the smaller piece you cut, the more difficult it becomes. Tried a couple different methods. You just gotta have some, if you're gonna try cutting glass, just do some experimenting, try it yourself, with some scrap pieces. One quick hard score, just a good clean straight, use a good straight edge, a good straight score, and don't let your glass cutting tool wobble like this. You want it straight up and come straight down, straight up and down. You don't want it to wobble side to side, because what's going to happen is that score you put in there is going to deviate and cause the glass to fracture untrue. So I had a little bit of that happen on these, but this front piece was the last one I cut. As you can see, it's not bad. But you can see the other side has little deviations to it. So does the back one. And then you got, if you have to work with that piece that you cut, then it kind of not the best. And you get all this chipping and gotta grind it off. Anyway, I'll post another video after I get this set up on my desk and the lights on it and everything. But I'm gonna let this sit for a few days. I don't know if I should drain it after I leak test it or not. I'll probably drain it again in a few hours and let it sit for a few more days, and then clean it up and set it up. But that's the last view. Just a small tank, but like I said, this is a full custom build. That's interesting. You look through the side there and it's got the prismatic effect. Pretty cool.